Today I am reviewing a pretty awesome knife. This is known as the Bushlaw Mark I, and it is made by my good friend Ross at Rifleman Knives. Now, you won't find this in the shops, so this is a real handmade product. That all said, I'll leave you the link here so you can find Ross if you desperately need to get hold of one of these. Now, let's look at the outside of the knife and work through what the knife's all about, and then we'll talk about specifically its capabilities, and the best way to do that is to just show you. Right, first off, this one has been built with a Kydex sheath. It's a high mount Kydex sheath, so when it sits, it's quite high on the body. Right, so it's something that is completely modifiable depending on your user preference in terms of how you want to wear the knife. So it can be worn upside down, and there's enough of a clip here by the formation of the Kydex mold around the handle to hold that thing in and out. Right? I prefer to have it upwards so that there's just less risk of it actually hooking up and pulling out accidentally. But if you're not aware enough to pay attention to that thing dropping out, then you shouldn't be wearing it that way. Just my hot fire on that. In terms of, is it going to be fit for purpose in terms of the strength and the security of the sheath? Because it's very, very little point having the world's greatest knife if you lose it every time you go and do some physical hard work in a survival situation or any other situation. This one has been carried around by me probably for getting over a year. I've never lost it once. I know it's in all manner of tasks, in and out of vehicles, in and out of machinery, on survival, hiking, and just general property maintenance tasks. So it's been very, very proficient at retaining that tool for me when I need it most. Ross has included, because of the survival sort of leaning of this particular knife, has included a loop there on the side for a ferrocerium rod. Right? That's popular on a lot of survival toted knives, and it just means that this is now a complete firelighting kit at the same time as being a practical knife. And I'm sure you've all seen that before, where I can turn my knife system into a firelighting system at the drop of a hat. That's just good prior preparation and planning. Right, so that's the knife there, first off, as it appeared in its Mark I form. So let's look at the knife itself. Now, Ross has designed it with a fair bit of weight. So this is about a 5, nearly a 6-inch blade at this end, the working end. So it's got a lot of weight, as you'll see when we get into chopping material up. It's got that machete feel to it as you're working with the knife. The Mikata handle is essentially bomb-proof. Nothing is going to damage that. It's well and truly pinned in. And Ross has built into it attachment holes for the purpose of strapping this thing with cordage to a shaft so that you've got an improvised spear. Now, for those of you who don't understand where and how that's used, it's very simple. When we look at realistic hunting and trapping from a survival point of view, not a hobby point of view, not a recreational point of view, for life and death living off the land, you get weaker, everything else stays strong because it's present in the ecosystem all the time and it's healthy. You're the weak link in the entire system. Now, for those gung-ho guys amongst you who want to race in there and pig stick the animal that you've been lucky enough potentially to capture in a trap, then you are exacerbating personal risk. Now, that's great when you can go home or can call an ambulance. When there is no such assistance and no such support, being able to have standoff attached to a blade and dispatch that animal as humanely as you possibly can for the purpose of consuming it to keep yourself going just makes common sense. It's not Rambo-ish, it's not gung-ho, it's common sense. So Ross has applied that common sense by providing those attachment holes there so you can lace that thing onto a shaft for a spear, and then you've got a standoff capability in survival to dispatch animals at range. That's sensible. The rest of it is very, very ergonomically contoured to a user's hand. As you can see, it's got the fatness to fit in with your hand. It's molded it doesn't have big protruding guards. That's important because when we start to do work with this knife, those guards are often got to be worked over the top of, and that leaves blisters and open wounds on your hands, and then consequently you end up with infections. Again, in the hobby space, no problem, go home, put a band-aid and a bit of betadine on it and you're all good to go. In life and death survival, you open up your hands, you're in a world of hurt. So this knife has had that factored into its design and structure. So very, very good that way. It has got almost a drop point at the end, but a nice belled curve at the front end of the tool, so I can pinch it and I can actually use it for skinning and gutting. Because if I have this too sharp, you can imagine, if it comes out to here, I'm literally only making a small amount of contact with whatever I'm trying to process, if it's game that I've managed to procure for myself, as opposed to being able to slice this direction like a skinning knife would facilitate. So that's been incorporated into the overall design and shape of the working edge of the tool. Now it's hardened tool grade steel, so it's not going to be something that's going to snap on you any particular time. It's also, it varies from the tip from about 2 mil down to about 5 mil at the working end. It's a single plate, so it's effectively a plate knife all the way from hilt to snout. One piece of steel, strong enough to be used as a crowbar and used for a whole stack of very, very heavy tool loading, and then micarta scales slapped on the sides, okay, and then simply pinned through. Lots of knives on the marketplace, and this one is exceptional because it's just been designed by people who have done some serious living off the land, done some serious survival training, and had some serious experiences. So we've kind of like drilled into what we want out of that particular tool. Right? It's not massive. It's big enough to be worn on the body, carried on the body. It's there on the body when you need it. Let's have a look at what it does on the block in terms of what kind of work we can subject it to, and is it going to be fit for purpose? Because that, at the end of the day, is what reviews on equipment are all about. Not how good they look, not how pretty they are, what work can they provide us with. One of the first things we need to do in most survival situations and in a lot of camping and recreational hiking situations is get a fire going for a whole stack of life support issues. Now if we're in a wet environment, that's problematic. And we can use all sorts of modern accelerants in this day and age to complete that problem. But if we take it right back to its base level and want to get into the dry material that is inside standing timber, this is the kind of knife we need to sort of look at and say, can this do that job? So I haven't hacked this through, haven't sawed it through, I've just snapped it off. Let's see if we can get into some dry material, make some kindling, and that's going to involve bashing this knife around to see if it's going to be big enough, width and lengthwise, to get through what I need to get dry material made. So I'm just going to use another piece of timber here to baton my way through this bit. Now this is important. We're most of the way through this piece of wood. Good job. But what's important here is you have enough length on a blade for survival purposes to be all the way through both sides, and have my hands far enough away that I don't smack my hand and cause myself an injury. Again, when you're doing this in the backyard, that's fine. When you're doing this for real, you damage your hand, you have dropped your survival prognosis significantly. Don't do it. So I can keep my hand right out here if I want to with this length of knife and still hit on this side, as in the hilt side, handle side or scale side of the blade, the back of the blade. So good job that way. That then allows me access to all this dry material in here for which to go and produce my fire. And I can continue to break this stuff down as I need to. This guy is strong enough by far to do all that kind of job. All that heavy lifting, that knife is well and truly across. That's the heavy stuff. That's probably one of the biggest jobs a knife in a survival context needs to be able to perform. No problem with that one, as we said. let's look at the finer stuff. Is the blade just a machete? Is it sharp enough? Is it able to hold an edge and be treated like such that I can use it for the small fine detail, like preparing trap components to head out and set traps to get myself food. Now, this is what I mean about lack of obstructions and big hilt guards and hand guards and saws on the back of blades and all those things that detract from my ability to use the back of the blade almost as much as I use the front of the blade. The back of the blade is square edged, okay? Square edged, so it can be used to scrape bark off, to create curls for kindling and tinder, also to clean up parts like this trap component I'm going to make up. But it's also, I can completely encompass the knife and get in there and really put a lot of pressure in against dry wood to do the fine detail work that I want it to be able to achieve. Right, so it's doing that easy. If I'm in terms of any other slicing and dicing I'm doing, I can butterfly this thing very easily. It's sharp enough to be able to, and unobstructed enough at the back to allow me to slice things off well. So those are two core characteristics as a survival proponent and teacher I look for in a tool. Can it do heavy work like splitting down firewood for kindling? And can it do fine work so I don't have to carry a second knife to do that fine detail stuff? Because both of those relate to life support for me. That's an all-in-one life support mechanism right there in my hand. The next thing I want to discuss is the quality of the steel. Now, particularly the maintenance component of that discussion. Stainless steel knives, for example, are very hard wearing, but they're a challenge to get a good edge on quickly. This is a high carbon steel, easy to put an edge on, even with expedient tools like stone grind-ups that I've made up to achieve that, or whatever I've got to hand. Like any good woodsman or bushman will know, if I head out without the ability to resharpen the tool, it can be razor sharp when I leave the workshop. After the first day of work, this thing is blunt. And then I'm using more energy, I'm subjecting myself to increased risk because I'm going to use more force in everything I'm doing, and I'm fundamentally losing calories, I'm losing everything. So I need to be able to rehone and sharpen this back up. Now, after a year of pretty heavy use on a daily basis, sure, this guy gets scratched up, but the edge has been very easy to maintain. Now, it's a nice 25 odd degree balanced cutting edge, so it's easy to maintain, it's very general purpose. And this back edge in here, which is where we do a lot of our fine work, is again protected by the nature of the knife, but most working knives have that built into them. But it also stays very nice and sharp, while this bit out here does most of the chopping into this space, is also holding its edge sufficiently such that I'm not starting from a 0 point every time I resharpen the blade. Sharp knife is efficient, it's practical, it's necessary. Blunt knife, outright dangerous. Right? And if you see how much weight I can move into this ergonomic hook down here that Ross has built into the handle, allows me to effectively hook the knife right back like that. Okay, with the middle two fingers or end two fingers, that allows me to use the full weight and kinetic energy transfer of force and movement to chop effectively but not lose control of the blade. Right? So overall, a workhorse of a knife. So folks, that is the Bushlaw Mark I. I believe that Ross has got plans afoot to make improvements, be they slight, to this overall design, but that is a highly effective, highly pragmatic, very ergonomically designed tool. It's an absolute crowbar, a machete, you name it. It's doing a lot of the jobs that would need to carry secondary tools for, and it's designed for wilderness survival. It's designed as a tough, heavy lifting, hard working workhorse of a tool. I couldn't go past recommending one better than that at this point. You're not going to get these mass produced in a factory anywhere in the world. These are made by Ross, by hand, in his workshop, and it doesn't get much better than that. The Bushlaw Mark 1.